Okay, so we'll get started. A bit of an intro about us. Hey, so welcome to our webinar titled Brand Image and Messaging. And before we get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about our two organizations. So I'm the Incubator Program Coordinator. We have a really wonderful incubator that happens here in Greater Sudbury. I do realize I have the wrong date on the slide. However, our next applications are open till April 6th for an incubator that's for a cohort that's starting in May. So please, I encourage you to apply if you're looking for mentorship and programming, networking events. It's going to be a really great program to really help boost your business if you're a new startup. And also our quarters are open to the public. You can come visit our space between 8:30 and 4:30 on weekdays. And we're located at 43 Elm Street. You can take a look at our co-working options and along with our incubator program at innovationquarters.ca. And the co-hosts of the event today is the Regional Business Center. They're a one-stop shop for information, guidance on starting, expanding, and operating a business. They serve a larger area than the Innovation Quarters. They serve Greater Sudbury, Espanola, Manitoulin Island, and the surrounding areas. And they do confidential one-on-ones with, business plan support, market research, business registration, and more. So if you just want help with how to register your business or you want some support in any kind of avenue that would involve your business, feel free to book a consultation online, or you can go and visit them in person. All this information is on their website at regionalbusiness.ca. And we have some really wonderful upcoming events. I just want to quickly highlight those before we dive deep into branding. So under the entrepreneurship series, we have business model canvas and market research. That's part of a reoccurring, 5-session series that is really valuable for if you're starting your business. So I encourage you to attend those. We have an in-person event happening. We're really excited about this next Tuesday. It's in partnership with Laurentian University, so it is happening in the gym fielding space. It's a free event where we're going to hear from some speakers, enjoy some great refreshments and food, and just really get a chance to network. So I encourage you to apply for free at innovationquarters.ca under the events tab to book a spot for Homegrown Ventures. And then our next event for February is CRA Tax Tips, and that's going to be presented by the CRA. Perfect timing, just for you to get ready for tax season. Hey, so a little bit about me. I'm a registered graphic designer. I'm an RGD. That's been my background for the past 14 years. As I own my own studio and I was a designer. I was also a design educator where I taught, the Adobe software. I've, had a chance to have my work featured and speak on different, marketing, advertising events. So it's been really a great pleasure to have that experience behind me in my current role as the Incubator Program Coordinator, because I do get to help support businesses, specifically with this, but with a whole other wonderful things that you get from having experience in owning your own business. So feel free to reach out to me after this presentation if you have any follow-up questions. My email is listed here. Okay, so today we're talking about brand image and messaging, and specifically, I really want to get into brand perception because that is something that no matter what your position is, whether you're an entrepreneur and you're only you're doing everything yourself, whether you are a business owner that hires a firm to do, any kind of like design or marketing work for you, or you're, a person that works in a marketing position. I think that this presentation is going to help any of these roles. So this is what we're going to cover today. So what is branding, and brand identity? So funny thing, when I was thinking like how can I explain this in the most basic way? One thing that came up was that the word brand comes from branding, branding like a metal rod onto like cattle, right? To say that's mine, that belongs to me. And dating back all the way to like ancient Egyptian times when, it really was like a symbol or like a logo almost, right? That they would brand into cattle. So we're going to chat a bit about how branding and brand identity is separate. But first, how does it fit into marketing and advertising? Like, what's the difference, right? So, marketing is kind of encompasses a bit of everything. It's really the strategy that helps you build awareness for a business. So, a marketing plan, coming up with budget for marketing, coming up with, all of the places you think that would really resonate with your target audience. That is marketing. Advertising is focusing on like acquiring customers or sales. So it's the repetitive, posting on social, buying ad spaces, all that is part of advertising. And then brand itself is how recognizable is your company and how does it make your customers feel? So we're going to talk a lot about feel today because it can be sort of like a difficult concept to grasp and be like, what do you mean my brand is how I make people feel? Well, there's so much more to a brand than just an image. So speaking of that, brand is the public perception or impression perceived of the business or product. So how does the public perceive you? So, if we think of a random brand right now, and I'm just going to try to think of one off the top of my head, let's just think of like Coca-Cola. Just think of that for a second. How does that make you feel, right? If you keep thinking about Coca-Cola, does your mouth start to water, right? Like there's more to just than just the logo, right? Or the can. Branding is how a business shapes its brand, which can include brand values, target audience, and brand positioning. And then within that, we have brand identity. So that's the visual, written, and audible representation of the brand. So that includes logo, the colors that you use. It could include a jingle, anything like that that really ties back to who you are as a company. Okay. So today, like I said, our presentation is going to focus on overall brand and brand perception specifically. But if you are looking to learn more about brand identity, I encourage you to check out our previously recorded webinar that we have available at innovationquarters.ca under events, under recorded webinars. If you scroll down, you can find it there. It's a really great session that I talk deeply into brand identity, how to create your logo. It's a really great webinar. So if you're looking for any of that, I do cover some of the topics that are above within that presentation. So I encourage you to go check it out. Okay, so firstly, how does your brand's perception affect your business, right? You're like, why is this important for me? Well, the perception of your brand is going to affect your price, right? If your business has the impression or your brand has an impression of being really luxury, right, your prices would be reflected in that. It will drive your sales, right? If people have good perception of your business, you'll have more sales. Same with customer loyalty, same with reputation. And finally, market share can also be very heavily affected by your brand's perception. So the reverse of that, what can affect brand perception? So we talked about what affects it and what can affect it. Yes, reversing that a bit. By the way, I really want this webinar to be very interactive. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to type in the chat. And I encourage you to type in the chat anytime you have something that comes up, an idea. But we'll get a bit more involved here. So I have a bit of a case study here for our first one. So key messaging and brand positioning will shape how your business is perceived. If you know of the business Tentry, they're a Canadian company. They're a B Corp, so that means they are, they have to meet specific values to be recognized as a good company in Canada. And their whole identity is around sustainability. Okay. They want to be, and in fact, they say, did you know the more you wear your stuff, the more sustainable it becomes? Or organic cotton is durable, ethically sourced, and woven to last, right? So that really speaks to who they are and who the kind of customer that they sell to. If you look at some of the images taken from some of their posts here, you look at these photos of these people and they look like they would all shop at Tentry, right? This is their customer. On the right, bottom right, we have someone who's literally, I believe, planting trees. So, and another thing around their business is that and the reason why they're called Tentry, so for every article of clothing, I believe, they plant 10 trees, which is a really, really neat concept. In fact, they even have something on their website called Circularity by Tentry. If you check it out, you can send your used Tentree clothing back to them and they will give you store credit. Like, how cool is that? If you're like, I'm done wearing this, I'm sending it back to you and I get store credit. And then if they can sell it again, they'll sell it used, or they'll just, dispose of it in an ethical way for you. And then also you can create your own little shop on here and sell your own used Tentree clothing on their site if you just want to go ahead and sell it yourself, which is, again, such a neat idea. And if you look at their mission statement, it really aligns with all of their practices, right? It aligns with their name, it aligns with all of this used programming that they have, because their mission is to become the world's most sustainable brand. It's truly what they believe in. And this image on the right, and I'll get more into this later, but this image on the right kind of talks about where they are landing. If you look at all of their competition, and this is something they've put together, and they have this on they have a specific branding website where you can check this out. But Tentree lands where the yellow dot is, but their target positioning is actually, you can see they want to be more sustainable, but they also want to be more trendy. Versus if you look at brands like Patagonia, they're more like function first. So their clothing are made for people who are like rock climbing and doing all these things. Whereas Tentree really wants to position themselves as more of like everyday clothing, but that's sustainable. So the next thing that can affect your perception is consistent branding, right? So if you are consistent in the way that you appear on all facets, it's going to kind of reinforce that brand awareness, which in return affects its perception. So if you look at this alphabet here, I was going to try to get people to guess, but it says it in the image. It's the Coca-Cola font, right? But if that line at the bottom didn't say Coca-Cola font, I bet you a lot of people would be able to guess that if I was to say, whose writing is this? Whose font is this? That this was the Coca-Cola font. Here I have some color palettes, okay? Even though there are no logos or packaging or anything like that associated with them, it's very clear that what these businesses represent just based on the color. So a little exercise here. Can anybody guess what the yellow and blue one is? Which business that is? Oh, yes. Okay. First answer in the chat. Correct. It is IKEA. Good job. I thought I'd have to give some clues here, but you guessed it right away. Amazing. So that again just reinforces that somebody can see a sliver of blue and a box of yellow and say IKEA right away, right? How recognizable are those colors to that brand? So brands that do a really good job of this is the No Name brand. And what's really funny about the No Name brand is that they play on the fact that they are like, we are nobody, we are no name, like, but they're so loud about it. And that's what kind of makes it amazing. And how hilarious would it be to walk around with a shirt that's a shirt with long sleeves? Actually, one of my friends just got a birthday card, and it was the No Name birthday card, and it said like no name card for any holiday or something like that on it. So it can really use it for anything. But this packaging, this brand, you can see from super far away, it's clearest to who they are. In fact, even if it had No Name on, the logo No Name was gone, you would know this was No Name, right? So my next exercise, can anybody guess, okay, what brand this is just by the packaging? So we're skipping like colors, we're skipping fonts, we're going right into packaging. Yes, yes. Okay, amazing. I'm getting lots of the right response here. That's great. It is in fact Vaseline. And it's incredible that just on the shape of a bottle that you'd be able to recognize a brand, right? And so really, I'm talking about colors and fonts, but it goes to everything, whether it's a jingle you hear, whether it's the packaging you see, as to how recognizable something can be, right? Vaseline has used the same container for like decades. It's been the same shape. Sure, it's had a few modifications here and there, but because of that consistent, emphasis on that specific packaging, they've done a really good job at, identifying who that is. Okay, the next thing that affects your perception is understanding your customers and what they need. So having a clear target audience. So I'm going to play a quick little video, and I'm just going to slide this over here. Don't worry, there should be no audio. Turn it down. Okay. And I want you to type in the chat who you think this is, okay? So pay attention to the shapes, pay attention to the color, pay attention to the message. What company do you think this is? And the answer is going to come at the end, so. Good guess. I think some people have gotten it. So yes, absolutely H&R Block. So good job for those of you who managed to guess that. Really incredible because, you know, all you're seeing again is color, some shapes, right? We didn't really see anything about taxes in there. So really great job with that guess. So really, how do you perceive this brand? And again, you can take it back to the chat if you want. Did this ad say affordable or luxury to you? Did this ad say it's easy to get, or does it feel more limited edition? And who do you think they're targeting with this ad, right? Easy to get, yeah, for sure. And what is green often associated with, right? Especially in the States, more so than here, but green is often associated with money, right? And that messaging that they use, like, you know, breadwinners, showing bread, penny savers, right? Clean, someone said, clean, clear, and precise, opposite of doing your taxes, you know? So really, they do a good job with this ad of kind of really understanding their customers and really targeting the right people with it. On the flip side, I can't wait to show you this ad because it's hilarious. I was gonna make you guess, but I couldn't get a version of the video that didn't have the name Jaguar on it. So Jaguar released an ad campaign, I believe last year, and it was controversial for the fact that people did not get it. And I'm gonna go ahead and play it for you. Don't worry, you don't need any audio. Um, oh, sorry. So people were upset. They're like, what is this? We don't see a single car. This is for Jaguar, a car company. Why are we seeing these brightly colored people on Mars? What is going on? Okay. And in fact, you should see some of the comments on this because it's absolutely hilarious. The only thing brave about this ad is to leave the comments section on. You're selling cars to rich people, not the Teletubbies. That one really got me laughing. My Jag just lost 90% of its value. And really the most important comment here is imagine selling to a minority of a population and still targeting the wrong people. I love that. Someone knows what's going on. So again, just an example of not understanding your customers here. Another thing that affects your perception is the message behind your advertising and how it can be perceived. So I'm going to play you another ad. This one I'm going to hop over here. Okay, again, don't worry about audio. So this is a Heineken ad. So a bartender is going to slide over a Heineken. The Heineken passes a Black woman. the Heineken passes a Black man, Heineken passes another Black woman, and the Heineken stops, sometimes lighter is better, to a white woman. And this was really controversial because it was deemed racist, right? Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you say lighter is better and have it slide all these people of color? Like, how awful is that, right? So Heineken ended up pulling the ad, apologizing, and then had to do a whole bunch of PR to kind of try to fix the issue. So clearly an example of like a really poor message when it comes to advertising. Um, and again, another case of that is, have you ever looked at a brand and said, I don't feel like that brand is for me, right? Have you ever looked at something and said, I don't want to wear that because I don't want people to think that I'm somebody that I'm not? Even though you might really want to buy it, you might say, well, everybody that wears that looks a certain way, right? Because the ads show people wearing that a specific way. And in a lot of like, for example, fitness or things like that, that is often sadly the case, right? There are a lot of strides and things that are changing in order to help, be more inclusive in advertising. And we're seeing a small change here from Lululemon, but I mean, things are changing for the positive. I hope to keep seeing that. But it happens all the time. Like, for example, someone really close to me had bought a really expensive bicycle. And they were a good cyclist, but they were not like a professional. And after using it for a short time, they ended up returning the bicycle. And I asked them, why are you returning it? You love your bicycle. And they said, well, I'm not as good as professionals. And people that saw me riding that bicycle automatically assumed I had to be a professional because everybody in the ads for that bicycle is being featured a pro. And so it made me feel like I wasn't good enough to ride this bicycle. And so they returned it. So how sad is it that sometimes your advertising message is so clearly set for a specific audience that you might lose sales because of it? It's okay to have a specific audience when you are selling to people, but sometimes you don't want to completely alienate potential sales. Okay, next up, be authentic and honest in your brand's public presentation. Okay, so when we're talking about product or services here, I'm sure you've all seen examples of fails, I wanted to get this and I got this instead, or not before and afters, but right, like this is what the image I was shown and this is what I got. And it happens a lot in fast fashion, right? Like websites like Shein and all those, like websites where the images are not usually the product photos, they're stolen from other places and then they try to recreate it and do a horrible job at it. But you want to be honest, right? You don't want to be using images that don't represent your product, that don't represent your location, that don't represent your team. You just want to make sure that you're honest about it. And that goes for descriptions too, right? If you're describing a service as coming with X, Y, Z, you want to make sure it does come with it. Same thing, same thing with this Whopper reality. I mean, how sad does that look, right? And this also goes into stock imagery, right? So you might be wondering, what is this photo doing here? A lot of people, especially if you have a smaller business and you just haven't had a chance to take photos of your team or of your products, of your location or whatever, you'll resort to stock photo or AI, and I'll get into AI after. But when it comes to stock photo, I just really want to be careful with using things that aren't representative of your company, of you, of the location you service, right? It might be like you might be you know, a single business owner, maybe you're a man, maybe you're a person of color, and you'll be like, contact us today and I'll get back to you right away and have a photo of this lady, right? She clearly doesn't work there, right? And it just can be misleading sometimes, especially when a lot of people end up going to a contact page or to an about page of a local business and be like, oh, are they local or are they just saying they're local, right? So it's really important to be honest and show photos of your team if you want to, or don't, but just don't put fake photos of your team. And that applies to other stock photos, which are just a nightmare, just horrible. I was doing design work a while back for an organization that worked in trades and training people in trades. And one of the things they said was that the previous agency they had worked with kept using stock photos of people working in trades without wearing any safety equipment. And so that's one thing that you have to be careful with stock is the people in those photos aren't actually professionals, right? So if you have a doctor holding tools the wrong way, right, it's going to be obvious to people in that profession. So, you just want to be careful about that. And then finally, this to me speaks as an example of something completely unauthentic, right? It doesn't feel real. Like, what kind of office have you been into where people are jumping up and down like that? Right? Or those like really typical photos of like people in suits, like all high-fiving each other around a boardroom, right? To me, those photos are so unauthentic. They don't feel real. They don't really represent your team. And in fact, I would recommend you either show photos of your team or you just avoid these kinds of stock photos altogether because it just makes you feel like you're not really a real business I don't know. There's something really unauthentic to it. Moving on to AI, right, when it comes to content. I'm sure you've all seen this because it made the news, and it was kind of funny, but it was an immersive Willy Wonka experience that was advertised with these like beautiful lollipops full of color, with these ads that looked so surreal and amazing, but they were all fake and AI generated. And when people showed up to the event, it was this like half empty, actually more than half empty warehouse with these like really sad looking staff workers. There's a photo of one of the staff workers and like just a few props kind of like falling over. So people were super upset because like, how did this ad, represent something so, like it felt dishonest, right? And another case of that was this social post that was made by, Queensland Symphony Orchestra, where, they're inviting people to the orchestra, but this photo again is so obviously AI generated. It just looks so fake. Nobody was commenting on the social post about going to the orchestra. In fact, they're just commenting on how bad that photo was. If you look, there people are counting fingers, are the right number of fingers there. Look, why is the orchestra sitting behind the couple? Like what? And they're like all clones of each other. It's just really odd, right? So it can in turn kind of turn into a bit of a nightmare when it comes to using AI. Another really funny and kind of sad case is it also comes down to like ChatGPT and AI generated text. Microsoft had published an article about like 10 top places you want to visit when you come to Ottawa. And I guess whoever posted it didn't actually check what ChatGPT wrote and posted the article. And I believe the third best place to visit in Ottawa was the Ottawa Food Bank, with a caption that said, "Consider going into it with an empty stomach." I mean, how sad is that, right? I've seen some laughter in the comment section, but like, if you're going to use AI, double check everything, make some changes, don't use it as is. It can be very much an embarrassing nightmare for you if you are just posting things as is. There's other cases too that I just didn't have an opportunity to put in the presentation, but there was I guess Trump's PR team was looking for more photos of Trump with people of color because there are none essentially. So there was an AI image of Trump with like a few like black people in a photo, and it was so obviously faked and posted, and people were really upset about that too. And there's another example of again, this one goes back to sort of like text-based, but chatbot for Air Canada. So someone was on the Air Canada website requesting a refund because there was a death in the family, and the chatbot ended up saying, yes, you can get a refund. But then when he went to Air Canada directly, they're like, no, that's against our policy. We can't give you a refund. And he said, well, the chatbot said it could. And so ended up going to court and winning, right? The judge awarded in the favor of the consumer because that chatbot is representing yes, eventually Air Canada had to give the money because that chatbot is representing your company. So there are, AI is not perfect, and we do want to be careful in how we use it so that we don't come off as inauthentic. Speaking of Air Canada, performance, reliability, or good service can affect your perception. Uh, I'm sure we all have thoughts about Air Canada. Most of them are likely not positive, right? So this is a clear example of how you can think of a brand and it kind of make you feel something. I just think of Air Canada and I kind of get a knot in my stomach and I'm like, oh, uh, just thinking about the nightmare of having to fly and everything that comes around with it. And in fact, there's so much negative, you know, press about Air Canada there's a lot of jokes around. Even Porter kind of making joking around at Air Canada here. Moving along, the flip side is a good example of good reputation. We know that great products or service, that it's going to increase your word of mouth. It's going to increase your positive reviews, and that in return increases your searches, your ranking in searches, and drives more sales. So really, and that plays to how you want to be as a business. Okay, and a great example of that is Volvo. I drive a Volvo. I love Volvo, so I will talk about Volvo. But I love this ad, and I just have to read it to you because the type is quite small. But this is from the 70s, and it says, "How well does your car stand up to heavy traffic?" What you see here is exactly what you think you see here. A Volvo supporting the entire weight of a 6.75-ton truck. We sincerely hope you never find yourself in a predicament like this, but if you do, we sincerely hope that you're in a Volvo. Great copywriting, and it really plays to how safe the car is. And just a quick bit of information about Volvo. They invented the seatbelt. There was a Volvo engineer that invented the seatbelt in the late 1950s. And because they thought it was so important that the world should have access to this, even though it was a patented invention, they left the patent open so that every other car manufacturer could in return start using seatbelts. The 240 series of Volvo, which is the one in this picture, just celebrated their 50th anniversary. But this was the first car to really kind of innovate around crumple zones, large bumpers, everything, created in order to prevent you from, being injured in an accident. Until even today, Volvo's all about safety, and their advertising efforts really reflect that. So a company's reputation can affect its perception. Okay, I really laughed at this bumper sticker of a Tesla. So this is a Tesla, by the way, in the photo. I bought this before Elon went crazy. And that just really speaks to you as a business owner and your reputation, right? Especially when you're a small business owner and the community knows you, right? You are kind of in the eyes of the public as well, right? So your actions can reflect on your business and how it is perceived. So you do want to really, be aware of that as a business owner. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on, how to kind of, be mindful of that. Influencers and brand ambassadors who will wear, use, or promote the brand can influence its perception. Okay, so we're going to go back to the chat. Can anybody guess what brand this jacket is? Yes, good job. Someone guessed it right away. It is a Burberry jacket, okay? Burberry is so known for this jacket that you could just show the swatch of beige and say, what company is this? And people would likely guess Burberry. Same goes with that sort of plaid pattern. And why did Burberry get so popular? So Burberry was actually created first for the military. It was a military jacket. And the technology behind the fabric allowed water to kind of repel away and not seep through while still being really light and not like this heavy wool jacket, which was really great. But then, celebrities started wearing it. We have here, let's see here, Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca. We have Sophia Loren in wearing it in 1958. Then we have, Audrey Hepburn and George Pepper on the set of Breakfast at Tiffany's in the early 60s, all wearing this jacket. And even today, whether they're celebrities or royalty, people are still wearing Burberry jackets. And it's still, really continuing to support that ideal of, it's utilitarian yet luxury. Okay, so I talked about what can affect perception, but how do we solve that? How do we make sure you have a positive perception of your brand? So going back to key messaging, you really want to focus on what sets you apart and make it the focus of your key messaging. So again, going back to the chat, out of all the businesses I've featured so far, can you think of who would be safe and reliable? Probably Volvo. Who would be efficient and cost effective? Likely maybe H&R Block. Who would be classic luxury? Burberry. And who would be eco-conscious and sustainable? Tentree, right? But those are their sort of value propositions. What are yours, right? Maybe you have unique flavors or recipes that no one else has in Greater Sudbury. Maybe you have the fastest service in town or the most affordable service in town. Or maybe what you're creating is really innovative and unique and nobody else does that, right? You're solving a problem that has yet to be solved. So really think about your value proposition and what sets you apart. And ways to start thinking about that is to perform an analysis, right? I'm sure you've heard of a SWOT analysis where you look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of both yourself and your closest competitors. You can do comparative analysis. So that's oftentimes done for people who sell a service or like an application or something like that and saying, well, my competitors don't include these, I include them. Or potentially doing a competitive analysis, similar to the one that Tentree did, where you kind of place yourself on a map against your competitors. This is a sort of like a 4-quadrant competitive analysis. You can have just like a single quadrant with just an X and Y value as well. All of that works, but it's just a great way to see where you can position yourself against your competition and what sets you apart. So consistent branding, right? We talked about how kind of being repetitive with color, typography, the design aesthetic, etc., is all going to really help remind customers of who you are, kind of bring back that perception and that image, and they'll know instantly who they are just by looking at packaging or hearing a jingle or whatever the case is. And I did want to highlight a local company called Barloom, and I just think they do a really good job. They're a new agency that is in Sudbury, but just love their Insta feed. And everything they do is really within brand and within that same tone of voice and color and all that kind of thing. So shout out to them. Ways that you can implement this. So if you're like, okay, that's great, but how do I make sure I'm consistent, right? Your business, your brand might have a brand guide or an identity manual. You might have one. You might have to dig it up if it's saved somewhere, but you really want to make sure that you're giving that manual to anybody that does design work for you or marketing or advertising for you. And let's say you do it yourself and you're using Canva. Canva has something called Brand Kit where you can save your brand colors and your brand font and your logos in there. So you're making sure it's always consistent and that you're not, changing the look of something every time you're creating an asset. You can also work with a professional, right? And they can really kind of make sure that it is consistent for you. So whether you're doing it yourself or not, just make sure that it has the same look and feel so that it is recognizable across the board. I really love this as an example of a brand guide on the bottom right. It's created by Jackknife. They're Canadian design and advertising company. Sorry, it was created by Fuse. No, it's created by Jackknife for Fuse. There we go. Okay, so understanding your customers and what they need. So how do you figure that out? How do you figure out who your customer is? This is going to involve some research, right? And we could really dive deep into this, but I just kind of wanted to give you a really quick overview of it. The difference between target market, target audience, and buyer personas is really figuring out who your customer is and putting yourself in the mind of your customer. Going all the way to creating those buyer personas, or at least the target audience, can tell you, where does your customer shop? What social platforms might they be on, right? You might say, well, I use Facebook every day, but maybe you're selling to a younger audience. Well, maybe it's not worth your time putting ads on Facebook because they won't be on that platform. Maybe you're selling, I don't know, sporting equipments. Well, where do people that play sports frequent? Where do they go? Where could you potentially put posters up, right? And really, this is a really important factor in determining who your key customers are and how you can potentially understand them. Like, what challenges are they facing? How can you make your advertising efforts more relatable to them? And you don't have to hit everything on this list, right? It might not be relatable to your business, but some of them are, right? If I'm selling EV cars, right, electrical vehicles, well, maybe political affiliations would tie in to my market. And again, I just want to quickly say Canva has some templates. I don't particularly like the look of this one, but there are some templates on buyer personas if you want to go ahead and try making some for your business. Um, so ensure your advertising has the right message. We talked about the wrong message being shown by Heineken and by Jaguar. But I do want to do a quick highlight to Jordan here. I don't know Jordan, but I certainly know of his ad. Okay, who's been on the Kingsway and seen this? Shout out to those of you who recognize this billboard. Oh, someone knows him personally. Wonderful. Well, I hope he's a good person. I'm sure he is, because his ad is amazing. I talked to the team and said, did anybody see this green billboard with a pixelated face? And pretty much everybody had. So that just shows how memorable and relatable this advert is, right? It's not about me, it's about you. When we see ads for realtors, usually it's just their face and their name and really nothing else, right? But the great thing about this billboard is that it makes you think for a second. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter what your realtor looks like. It's about finding me a home, right? So really props to whoever created this billboard for Jordan. And when you're creating your ads, and it doesn't have to be a billboard, right? This could be a social post, that could be a poster, it could be anything. Really think about, is it going to be memorable? Is it going to resonate, right, with the people I'm trying to target? And try to differentiate yourself a little bit when you're working on that. So be authentic and honest, right? We talked about, how AI can make you look unauthentic if it's not used properly, how some specific stock photos can make you feel not authentic or honest, right? And representing your products properly. So are you talking about yourself and your story and your background and your content, right? This could be on your website. And I talk a lot about an about page, because the first thing I do when I want to work with a company or hire a company is I go to their about page and I look, are they local, right? Are they in Sudbury? Sorry, I should specify, right? It's not just someone from Toronto saying I service everywhere. Who are they, right? I want to get to know a little bit about the owner, especially when we're working with small businesses, right? It's very important to kind of be honest and true to who you are here. Are you describing your products and service honestly, right? If you're targeting Greater Sudbury, does your business feel like it does, right? And I have an example here of like located in Sudbury, Ontario, but the website I had been to, I'm not gonna say what, was showing photos with like palm trees and like skyscrapers, and I'm like, okay, this is not Sudbury. Like, I don't know who chose these photos, but it just doesn't feel authentic, right? And we talked about performance and reliability, right? So you always want to strive to do better. And I mean, it's easier said than done, right? But how do you know to do better? So you want to ask for feedback often from your customers. Was it easy to find, easy to use, easy to book? How did you like it? Did you enjoy it, right? And sometimes asking them face to face, you're not going to get an honest answer. They might just want to please you and say, oh, good, thanks, right? So that's why anonymous surveys that you can send your customers after are great. You can do some using SurveyMonkey, Google Forms. There's many ways you can send an anonymous survey. Another thing you could do is if you encourage people to leave reviews, whether it's on Google, your Google My Business page, or whether it's on your website or whatnot, or on a social media platform, reading them and responding to them appropriately, right? That's really important in doing better. So sometimes someone might be really upset. You might say, I'm so sorry that you've experienced this. Please send us a message, and I'm happy to personally have a conversation with you on how we can solve this. Having those side conversations that are not open to the public, where everybody's seeing that back and forth with an angry customer, is really encouraged. And then always continually working on improving your product or your service, right? And making it better. An example, this is not a local company, but just love this picture. What's on the package, what you get, how disappointed would you be, right? And consider implementing a referral program, right? If you're getting a lot of positive feedback, or you're trying to drive some sales, you could say, well, if you refer a customer, you'll get, give them your name, say, oh, so-and-so referred me. And next time that person comes in, you could say, okay, you're getting a bit of a discount, right? And we talked about a company or the owner's reputation can affect its perception, right? How Tesla's reputation is kind of under fire because of Elon Musk right now. That's like obviously an extreme example, but more on a local, in a local perspective, you do want to be that role model, right? Ways that you can be positive is being active in the community. So joining sports, clubs, board positions, volunteering, anything that kind of gets you as a person out there in a positive light. And then people will say, well, I want to go with this business because I know this person, they're on my sports team and I want to support them. Or I know this person, they volunteer, at this location. I think they do great work and I want to support their business in return. Obviously be respectable in person and online. Again, easier said than done, right? But you got to say, like, you're the, especially at the small business stage, or obviously at the big business stage too, but all eyes are on you. You're like the face of the company oftentimes, right? So you do really want to be that role model entrepreneur. And when you uplift other entrepreneurs, right, there's a sense of community where they'll want to support you in return. And sometimes it just takes that one big contract, right, to really support your business, especially as you're taking off. And then finally, you can consider sponsoring a team, an event, or a charity that aligns with your brand, right? So this could also be in-kind donations. So if you're like, I don't have money to give to a charity, but I could do this, right? Let's say you do bookkeeping. That's your company. Well, maybe you'll do the bookkeeping for a charity, and that will be your in-kind donation, and that will make you a sponsor, and you'll be featured on all of their materials, right? It's a great way to add visibility and positive perception for your business. And then finally, influencers and brand ambassadors who use and wear promote your product. I want to give a quick little shout out to a local company called Nickel City Beard Blends. They do a really great job with their ambassador program. This is a snapshot of their socials. You can click and take a look at who their ambassadors are in Greater Sudbury. If you go to their website, there's actually a page for ambassadors, so you can sign up and try to and apply to be one. Probably you'd need a beard for that, or maybe you're oh my gosh, a person that cuts beards. What's the name I'm looking for? Not a groomer, but maybe someone will a barber. Thank you, a groomer. So just an example of a really great way to kind of get people on board promoting your brand for you. So a brand ambassador is an individual, or it could be a group, right? It could be another company. In the case of a barber, it could be a barber studio or a salon, who are compensated in some way for promoting a brand or product. So they could be posting on social media, right? Being like, hey, if you use this discount code, you could get 15% off. But they're actually using it and promoting it. Or it could be in person, right? Where you might go to a salon, and then they might use a product on you and say, hey, like, I'm using a local product on you, you should try it out, right? And use my name and you'll get a discount. You do want to make sure that your brand ambassadors are passionate about your brand, because you want to make sure they use it. You want to make sure that their values align with your brand. That is super important, right? You might say, well, my great aunt is an amazing person and I really want her to be a brand ambassador, but maybe nobody that she speaks to is within your target audience, right? So it really wouldn't make sense to use somebody just based on like your friendship or anything like that. You want to make sure that their circles are within your target audience. And of course, you can work with an agency to help find those brand ambassadors for you. And then, I just want to say, like, if this is feeling like it's a lot for you, right? As business owners, you do it all sometimes, right? You wear so many hats and you have so many responsibilities, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. If you do have the capacity to work with a professional, there's a professional for all different types when it comes to improving your brand perception, whether it be a designer for your brand identity, your website, your assets, or a marketing agency or an advertising agency or public relations, right? They can help you with communicating to the press or events or crisis management, right? Or copywriter to help you with improving your writing. Maybe you're using too much ChatGPT. Our professional photographer, right? Or videographer to help get you those authentic images that you need, right? To replace those AI generated or those stock images that don't really speak true to who you are, your service or product. And I just want to end on a note here that products are made in a factory, but brands are created in the mind. And that's such a beautiful quote by Walter Landor. He was a brand designer and the founder of Landor and Fitch. And I really love this because it is so true, right? You know, there's other, people out there who've said things like it takes, years to build a brand reputation, but it can only take 5 minutes to destroy it. So you really want to focus on how your brand is perceived so that it can in turn, generate the most sales for you. Um, and just think that if you're not giving your customers in the market the story you want them to think about when they think of your business, they're going to define their own story. So you want to make sure that you are in control of your brand message when it comes to being out there in public. So thank you. That's it for me. So I encourage you to, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat and we can answer those right here. So this presentation was recorded or is recorded. So we'll go ahead and put it on our website under at innovationquarters.ca. So you can take a look at the presentation and share it with others if you want. We also have a short survey that will be coming out, just checking in to see if you have any feedback for next time. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but I'm seeing a lot of positive thank you messages. So thank you for all the really nice comments. And like I said, feel free to reach out to me. You can send me an email if you have any questions. And we can have, if you want to set up a separate consultation for your business around, brand perception, branding, all that kind of thing, please do, and I'd be happy to meet with you. Okay. All right. Well, take care, everybody. Have a great afternoon, and hope to see you at our next event. Bye.